Hi there, everyone. It is currently Mother's Day morning here on the 10th of May 2015. We are continuing to track our now Super Typhoon Noul out here in the Western Pacific, and that is the big topic here today because this storm system has rapidly intensified during the overnight hours, and now as we head into our Sunday morning, it actually is packing winds gusting upwards of 260 kilometers per hour, according to analysis by the Japan Meteorological Agency and also the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. They also have sustained winds in the center of circulation around 213 kilometers per hour. So as far as wind damage is concerned, that is enough to cause some serious damage out here, and that is why Signal Force 3 warnings have been issued up and down the eastern seaboards, but also preemptive volunteer evacuations have already been put in place here across parts of Aurora and Isabella. Several hundred families have been told, you need to get out of harm's way here, because in low-lying areas we're looking at the threat of storm surge, flooding farther inland, and of course coastal locations are going to be seeing these winds really gust up, especially there into Cagayan, around Apari, over towards Santa Ana, and those eastern facing towns and villages up and down the coastline there. Take a look at the satellite imagery. This just shows you our intensification we have been seeing here. Of course, the eye is the first thing you see here at first, and it is just absolutely circular. But the big thing you want to indicate, though, is that in the eye wall, we have very high cloud tops, and that's just showing us the intensity the storm is right now. But the other big thing is that if you look at this, it's sitting within basically an ocean of dry air off here towards the west and towards the east, but the center of circulation is very circular, or excuse me, the overall circulation, that is, and it almost looks like a buzzsaw, and that indicates to us a very good outflow aloft coming out from the center of this storm system, and that is allowing it to further intensify, plus sea surface temperatures under it absolutely warm. It's like a hot spot out there. We're talking about 31 to 33 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures. That is just an abundance of energy fueling into the storm system. Take a look at the radar imagery. I'm sure if this was in the Atlantic and you saw this radar coming on shore, this would be top story out there. Just every station broadcasting it. Here in the Philippines, definitely is top story. A lot of people are talking about this storm system. I just hope everybody is heeding the warnings out ahead of it. Microwave imagery, you can also see that center of circulation. The big thing you want to get out of this is that inner eye wall. This is where those winds are located, upwards of 250 kilometers per hour, plus it is gusting that high. That is enough to definitely toss around some objects, especially light objects. Any roofing that is not reinforced, tin roofs, could definitely fly off out here, and I think that's going to be one of the big problems we have. The good news is that we take a look at the satellite loop. The storm is turning more and more towards the north today. We have a weakening in the subtropical ridge. Vice coming onshore directly and slamming the coastlines. I think it's going to skim the coast. Unfortunately, it still is going to continue to maintain its intensity as it does that. And the other big thing is that we're still going to be seeing that eye wall come on shore, but at least the right front quadrant is not going to be coming on shore. If you don't know much about tropical meteorology, the right front, that is where the worst of the weather is, because you were talking about the forward motion of this storm combined with the winds as well. That causes the threat of not only surge, but also these damaging winds. You get those high surf that comes on shore. Do want to mention some reports of damage farther down towards the south. Actually, some of these smaller islands, you have not really seen any significant damage. That's the good news. I haven't seen any reports of any casualties from this storm either. Not just from the wind and the rain, but sometimes we often see fishermen who venture out to sea when they shouldn't. I haven't seen any reports of that. We have seen over 100 people evacuated there in southern Luzon as well due to the threat of lahars of recent volcanic eruptions combined with a rainfall could bring that threat. I think that the threat is over with now, though, once our storm tracking off here towards the north. Most of the outer rain bands are starting to shift there into central and northern portions of Luzon. Take a look at the forecast track, though, from the Japan Meteorological Agency. They do expect it to make landfall just east of Apari here, early afternoon hours. Basically skimming the coastline, though, making that landfall as a very strong, potentially violent typhoon, according to their track. Already is a super typhoon, according to JTWC. Then eventually turning towards the northeast and passing over towards Okinawa. Good news, once it starts to track off in that direction, we're talking about interaction with vertical wind shear, so that should cause it to decrease in intensity. Still a lot of rain because it kind of get wrapped up with a passing front, but it's going to be a different beast once it gets up there. Let's talk about the track from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Key thing you want to note from this is that outer line right here, that outer circle. That's where they are saying tropical storm strength winds will extend out to. So a lot of people are going to be seeing some windy conditions, even though this is not making a full-on landfall. It's just going to kind of skim the coastline here. You still got those outer rain band guys coming, so that's still going to bring some rough weather. Now, the worst of it, though, is going to be near that center of circulation. Santa Ana, right up here at the point. You have Apari right in here. Good news, Apari kind of sheltered from the direction this storm system is taking, and there's not a lot of people that live over here. There is still a few small villages. One of the main reasons you don't have a lot of people living in eastern portions of Luzon, it's the fact that this is typhoon country. You get them all the time out here. But this is still going to be bringing that threat of storm surge, even though it is staying just off the coastline, because you have those winds that wrap around, it pushes it on shore, and you're talking about high tide actually being around about 9 to 10 a.m. this morning. So that's going to be bringing that threat there as well. Now, the tide is going to be going down, so by the time the storm does push overhead, I think it's going to be much lower. So even in this morning, we're still looking at that threat of some rising sea level waters. So if you are out here and you haven't made those preparations now, you're really talking about last-minute preparations now. You want to be heading out to an evacuation center. Farther inland, also still not just talking about the threat of storm surge, but the threat of flooding. Up to 250 millimeters expected. In some areas, I think it could be locally more. So flooding and landslides, especially in the mountainous terrain. You have to remember, when you're talking about this area of Luzon, we're talking about the Sierra Madre Mountains up and down the coastline here. So as our storm system pushes off there towards the north, that moisture wraps around the northern periphery, and these mountains just squeeze that all out like a sponge. So you're talking about that increased threat of flooding across much of this area as our storm system tracks off there. Throughout the day here on Sunday, it really is going to be impacting those of you. And as we head into Monday morning, eventually starting to taper off, but those showers still lingering behind it. So Sunday, really, that's the max of these winds out across much of this area before the storm starts to churn and it makes its way off there towards the north. Now, I do want to also talk about the impact farther here towards the north. And I'm going to kind of change the way I'm talking about this as opposed to the Philippines, because in the Philippines, when we're talking about this intense of a typhoon, we're talking about significant structural damage and the loss of life if you do not prepare properly. In the southern Japanese islands, where the storm system's heading next, even over towards Taiwan, you're going to be seeing some passing showers, but I think the southern areas out here are really going to be impacted by this. We're not really worried about the loss of life if you are smart. If you head out to the ocean to take some photos, or you're basically out driving in the worst of the storm, there is a very dangerous situation there, but for the most part, Okinawa is built for typhoons, especially the structures out here. There's very strict building codes. So you're not really going to be worried about this too much, but just be sure to take precautions. For example, I'll just show you this image here. Now, this is from the Cadena Air Force Base from a previous typhoon. Getting ready, taking care of lawn furniture, trampolines. It seems like every year we see a trampoline flying around across this island. And these are the simple things I'm talking about that you can do to avoid damage, because stuff is going to go flying if you don't do that. If you notice your Nihonjo counterparts, if you are military out here, they do take stuff in, they secure it. Maybe they carry on with their everyday lives, but they do know about flying debris. Now, this is one thing I do want to mention. We have our storm track here that it is expected to actually move just towards the east of Okinawa at this time, according to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. The worst of the storm is actually located in the right front quadrant, as I've mentioned a few times here. So if our storm lingers just off the coast and it keeps on drifting in that direction, Okinawa actually may not see winds that strong. Something to keep in mind. Now, if that track goes way towards the west, it is going to be a much, much different story. And you can even see here from the ECMWF model, it actually has it a little bit farther towards the west. But if it's over here, notice that the winds on the northern periphery of that center of circulation, not quite that strong. It's kind of a night and day story when you're talking about a fast-moving storm getting up into the areas here, into the westerlies, the higher latitudes. we're talking about a different beast. So I think it's going to be a lot of rain coming with this, not only for southern Japan, but also stretching across much of mainland Japan over towards Korea because of this interaction with passing low off there towards the north. So, for example, if you're off there in the Mori, Misawa area, and you're thinking the winds are picking up, is this associated with a typhoon? Not really. Actually, more or less a spring storm or a late winter storm coming in. That's going to bring some snow across parts of North Korea, so something to keep in mind there for you. Also, I do want to mention Dolphin. It is way over there towards the east. This is our other storm system. This is going to be a big storm. I think that's going to be one of the big problems coming out of this, hitting a lot of these smaller islands before pushing towards Guam eventually by next week. So that's going to be the big topic next week. If you are out here, we're going to be talking about that one. I think that's going to be a large storm and potentially very serious one for some of these smaller islands. For now, let's continue to track our typhoon, guys. This is the main topic. If you are being impacted by this, let us know. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please post them down there in the comment box below. Just drop my mic. Stay safe out there.